When it comes to fiction, I feel like you don't often get the chance to see a consistent one version of a character get repeated endings that you could see as being a good send off to them, endings that make you remember all the good journeys they've had, and just a lecture being a part of a series where you can point to a certain entry that felt final, that felt climatic, and point to that entry and be like, hey, you know what? If I can enjoy this as its own standalone thing that had a few sequels before it, then that might have been a good enough ending for this character. That being Kiryu Kazuma, the Dragon Dojima. The dragon, you know the guy, if you're a Yakuza fan. If you know anything about these games, you know who I'm talking about. You've played these games before. That's why I'm using footage from a few highlights of games that I think could have been his finale. Nonetheless, I think that for me personally, this topic is an interesting one in the fan base, because Kiryu, who keeps returning again and again, be it a brand new game that is a sequel to a game that was supposed to be his ending, or another Kiwami or some kind of remake or re-release. They keep having him in the real, the limelight, whether that be a director's cut, a Kiwami, or what have you, or some TV show remake of the original Yakuza game. Nonetheless, I feel like when it comes to Kiryu Kazuma, he's been fortunate. Fortunate in the sense that I can't think of any characters in general, especially when it comes to a long-standing video game series, of a legacy character returning and still feeling mighty as he did in the first time we saw him back in the PS2 era, in this instance being the original Yakuza in 2005. But for Kiryu especially, I can think of not really any characters that reach his level of upcomings of a character returning and feeling worthwhile. I don't take that lightly. I just mean that all the forms of media I've, enjoyed in over the years, I've gravitated towards Kiryu because of him being just one version of a character, the one in the games, the one that we know, played by the legendary heavenly voice that is Takeya Garuda. A character that, for all that he's reappeared, I'm still happy to see him appear, even if a game that's supposed to be the end. Whether that be your Yakuza 3s, your Yakuza 4s, Yakuza 5, and even Yakuza 6. All those I listed were at one point believed to, or maybe mentioned by one person of the RGG's development team at some point, envisioned to be an end for Kiryu, and they definitely all read that way when you play them, from the gameplay to the story to the side activities that highlight Kiryu's point at this time in his life, including karaoke definitely being a good way to measure how far he's come or what he's feeling. All that being said, I adore Yakuza 3 and I adore Yakuza 4 and I especially adore Yakuza 5 and I even love Yakuza 6, and I also enjoyed the man who erased his name. And the more I think about it, the more I love Yakuza 8, aka Infinite Wealth, especially for Kiryu's part of the story. I think that all means something, that these games are all supposed to be his ending, or at least RGD treats them at some point in the development, and Yokoyama and whoever else has helped them write during the writing process, they treat them as, maybe this could be Kiryu's last story. I don't think that's a bad thing to look at these games. Sure, I do have the collector's edition box of Yakuza 6, The Song of Life, and reading the material in that, with the fan art included, the release, and the whiskey glasses. Oh, I love those. They definitely treat it as being Kiryu's last game to celebrate the original 10 years of the franchise. But in hindsight, is that really a bad thing? Did it make it age badly, or did it age like a fine whiskey or a wine? I think it's the latter. Again, if you, not to be too, wax poetical, wax lyrical about this, but in terms of just looking at this, I think that in your own life, you have points that are high points and low points, and points that you will look back on and think that was a damn good moment. If your life was a movie, you could write something about it, maybe you would have it end at a certain point that you've already been past. And looking at Kiryu's journey throughout the Like a Dragon series, even including something like Yakuza 0, I think there is something that, like that, what I just mentioned, that I can equate to the developers, to the different directors across the years, the writers, the programmers, the art designers, the artists, and even just the idea that this series is one about Kiryu growing alongside its developers. This series is games, and then Kiryu himself, who's aged and fought through, illnesses and coming of age problems that even the developers have been through, is looking to the history. And I do think that part of that might be intentional, part of it not, but If you're making something that you've been a part of since the beginning, and that you've grown as a creator besides, and then you've added your own, your points of your life, your little footnotes, the cliffs and the valleys and the wells and information that you have, I think that can be equated to Kiryu Kazuma. And of course, as Takia Kuruda himself grows older, of more, being such a cool guy with his own wisdom, and if you look at the way he carries himself online and everything, he definitely carries himself with a sense of just a strongness to him that I definitely think has warmed himself into Kiryu over the years as Kiryu himself has aged and evolved and still an ever strong character. And by strength, I don't just mean the fights. Obviously, I'm showing some cool and funny footage of his fights through gameplay I've captured. That's the point of being a fan. But here's some footage of Kiryu in the beginning of Yakuza 6 going down his own memory of characters that are pivotal to him as a aged man. I think of all that in mind, from the gameplay to the storytelling, the voice acting, the writing, even if there are some low points in the writing at some points, but the highs are such a big high, like a Mount Everest of heights. And I think that all that comes together to forming that it is a messy history for this character. Again, he is a video game character, he's a mascot, he could have had his story end at any of these points. I even think Yakuza 3 could have been where they should have ended Kiryu's story. But then I'm happy with what we got for Yakuza 4. That could have been a nice, safe ending for him too, since he needs to be happy with Haruka. Even something like Dead Souls, from my understanding, that, different universe, but that was a good ending for Kiryu. And then Yakuza 5, a game that I adore and I tear putting that one being my favorite. But Yakuza 5, that ending of Kiryu in the snow, I don't mind that. That could have been a great poetic ending of him having Haruka by his side. And then as you see in this footage, Yakuza 6 is like waking up from a dream, but I do like that splash of reality that is Yakuza 6, and the story the sites tell of Kiryu confronting even more of a personal story, arguably after 5. And then you have something like the man who erased his name being Kiryu's version of Yakuza 7, one that I do think is a worthy story, and while you can argue that one was the most filler of them all, I do think that they told something there that hit the gut punch that fans were waiting to be recognized as them, the audience, that payoff, that scene of Kiryu at the temple. And even a game like Yakuza 0, you could argue that any prequel is, at some point, just filler, but Yakuza 0 made it work by being a way to show how Kiryu could have been, reflecting on his life after the events of 5 during that dream and going to, obviously 0 did happen, but a point to his life where it was him and Nishiki and everybody was happy. So as to say, I do think that Yakuza is a series that has made it work. They've made the flaws along the way work, either that be character deaths or missed opportunities. And they made that work by making these guys feel real, and that's the tie back to what I said earlier. It all feels somewhat of just a deliberateness that was a given and somehow worked out, reflecting on these own developers along the way, and how when it comes to bringing back Kiryu, yes, there's definitely, I'm sure, some kind of mandate from Sega themselves telling RGD that, hey, we need to keep sales up, but it doesn't mean that RGD hasn't tried to establish new characters like Ichiban, Kaito, Yagami, and many other one-offs. No, they can and they have done it. Yakuza has always excelled when it comes to games, introducing a character for the first time, being that Yakuza 4, Yakuza 5, or even Yakuza 7. But that doesn't mean that having new characters detracts from, or having Kiryu return detracts from these new characters. In fact, I always look forward to seeing how they interact. Because Kiryu, they happen to create a character of Kiryu that was so malleable, so, to be honest, basic at first. He's able to evolve into something that still feels inherently true to the original vision. This guardian Yakuza, this guardian dragon, this guardian father being trapped in the ever-spiraling downworld, criminal underworld with many twists and turns and friendly faces made and lost along the way. But I think that shows a testament to how much Kiryu has evolved. Again, I could point to any sub-story, any side mission, any major story fight that makes me follow this guy again and again. The fact that I love his final fight in Yakuza 5, his final fight in Yakuza 6, Yakuza 7 with the man who erased his name story, and even Infinite Wealth, all of those 4 could have been a big ending for Kiryu. But they found a way to make each of his villains work. I've talked about videos like that in the past, dissecting his villains. again, just check out my channel. I've been doing Yakuza for over 3 years now. Go check it out. And I feel like that Kiryu himself has so much to draw upon, so much to talk about. Whether it's the villains conflicting with his own dragon Irizumi, the tattoo battles, or his bond of Haruka and Daigo, or even how he can interact with somebody like Joji Kazama and how I felt like that was more spiritual for him than anything else. All of those little facets I can take apart from Kiryu. Again, a character is relatively basic, but has so much more going on underneath. He's not just some cool guy with a dragon tattoo. That's the key thing here. There's always more to a character like him than stereotypes, like he said in Yakuza 2 back in the day. But all that in mind, I think that the point of Kiryu is that the basicness of his character has led to a lot of subtlety, a lot of, so much to say, dissecting the ink on his back to show why each part makes up his greater whole. And I feel like that explains Kiryu quite well. He's a character dawned on and marked by his Irizumi, but one that's been able to forge his own path and say something that is timeless. And that's the archetype that expands to his likeness being used for historical figures in the samurai games, or even a game like Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, where Takeya Kuruda plays Kiryu, or plays Kenshiro in that game. I feel like that's the point, that you can have all these characters that are similar to Kiryu, but not. It's because Kiryu himself has something simple about him, something noble, and there's a bit of him that you can put yourself into, to aspire to be. Obviously not in terms of going around and punching an army of guys, but you can just be strong, be strong enough to be gentle, like the legendary Peter Cullen once said. And all that in mind, I feel like there's a point to it all. The reason they keep bringing Kiryu back is because they have something to say. And if the guys at RGG do have something to say and bring him back Kiryu, then I don't mind them bringing him back if there's a point to it all. And if Yakuza 8 showed anything, there was a point to holding on to your past and not trying to run away from it, not trying to be ashamed from it, and instead learning from it and keeping that door open in your own life to meet people again that you haven't seen in forever. Because whereas short as life is, it's good to keep that door open to wanting to see people again, to want to be healthy, to be mindful, to keep your body, soul, and tech all intact. That even though there's always going to be dark days ahead, if a guy like Kiryu can get past his own stubbornness and grow, then you can too. I feel like that's an important thing to acknowledge with this franchise and its fans and its creators, that obviously people can get so hung up on wanting to grow and be better, but you don't have to be better than everybody else. You just have to be better than yourself. I read Mr. Tiger Drop Films. Thank you for checking out and joining my little soapbox on Kiryu's story. But I really want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. When do you think his story should have ended, or is there something more to it? As I talked about in this video, something more underneath the surface. But nonetheless, if you're new to this channel, or if you haven't seen my videos in a while, go check out my whole playlist of Like a Dragon videos. I've been doing this for 3 years, and I have plenty to say about the franchise, new and old. So come along, get your favorite stamped axes, and let's Tiger Drop our way to uncovering this franchise and finding beauty in the unlikeliest of places. Until next time, I'll see ya.